It's too late now. It is. It's like, I should have been in 11th grade right now. I should have been a senior next year. You know, and I'm not. I'm still in the 10th grade, you know? It's too late. Anybody dropping out?
Not everybody, not all Latinos, but far too many. About 30% of Latino youth drop out without graduating or never even enroll in school. About 150,000 Latino youth quit school last year. And if nothing changes, that number will only increase because Latinos under the age of 18 represent the fastest growing segment of our population. Most American cities have large Latino populations, both immigrant and native-born. Dominicans and Puerto Ricans in New York, Cubans in Miami, Mexicans and Central Americans in Los Angeles and much of the Southwest. While dropout rates vary among these groups, the overall rate of 30% is higher than that of any other racial or ethnic group. By contrast, 9% of whites and 12% of blacks fail to finish high school. What explains this persistent and seemingly intractable failure rate among Latino youth? Who's to blame? Is there a simple explanation? Society is always asking the schools to solve its problems, including this one. Most educators seem willing to search for solutions, but whether schools alone can solve the problem is doubtful.
The Merrill Report. Lost in Translation, Latinos, Schools, and Society is brought to you by the people of Toyota. And by the Ford Foundation, the Annie E. Casey Foundation, the Pew Charitable Trusts, with additional funding by the Annenberg CPB Projects and the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation.
Why does 30% of Latino youth drop out of high school? There are dozens of possible explanations, including poverty, insufficient educational opportunities, and the lure of the streets. But let's start with language. Difficulty speaking English is the reason talked about most often. For immigrants or the children of immigrants, learning to speak and write English is generally considered the key to success.
I think people draw a correlation between knowledge of English and intelligence as well. So if a kid doesn't speak English very well, he must not be very intelligent.
3.2 million American students are enrolled in special school programs designed to teach them English. About half of them, 1.4 million, are in California, where we locate our story. California, like most other states, is trying to figure out the best way to teach these young people English. There are three competing approaches: English immersion, dual language, and, the most controversial, bilingual education. In bilingual education, teaching in the early grades is in the native language, but in English in the later grades.
And they need to at least have knowledge in their own language of how to read and how to write, because many of the skills in Spanish are transitional to English.
In the method known as English immersion, all teaching is in English from the beginning.
It is really a very simple process in teaching English. If you can speak English, you can teach English.
In dual language classrooms, all children learn to speak and write in two languages.
We are all learning a second language. Some of us are learning English as a second language, and some of us are learning Spanish as a second language.
In 1976, California passed a law requiring bilingual education. In this approach, students are first taught in their primary language and moved gradually, over 3 or 4 years, into English. The goal is English fluency. In this kindergarten class at Woodlawn Elementary School in Bell, California, at least 90% of the day is in Spanish.
Está bien, ¿verdad? Es un libro bien bonito. ¿Qué ven aquí? ¿Qué es esto, el bebé? Un potrillo, ¿verdad? Dígame potrillo. Este es un gallo. En inglés decimos rooster, ¿verdad? Bilingual classes work, children do learn, and they do become fluent in English. And that's the goal of the bilingual program, is for children to become fluent in English.
Mary Jennison co-teaches with Carmen Ibanez. As with most kindergartners, these 5- and 6-year-olds learn the basics, the alphabet, how to count, and how to write their names.
Lourdes. Oh, mira, una S. ¿Es la mayúscula o la minúscula? La minúscula.
She's doing S words and finding the S in the children's names, because one way children learn how to read, especially when they're beginning, is finding letters in their names.
¿Cuántas hay S's en la palabra Julián? ¿Cuántas es? Cero. Vamos a poner cero. Kimberly, tu nombre es cero. Vamos a poner cero. Oh, mira, Lourdes, ¿cuántas? ¿Cuántas? Una. Vamos a poner una.
About 10% of the day is spent doing English as a second language, which is commonly abbreviated ESL.
Whatever literature I'm doing in Spanish, I try to find something in English that relates so that I can teach an ESL lesson in my classroom as well that will go with the literature.
At Woodlawn, playtime is also learning time. These kindergartners have a supervised period in which they jump rope and play games in English.
Now help me say the rhyme. Here we go. Hippity, help me hippity, hop. How many?
4, I stop.
Good. Okay, Andrea. 1. Try again, Andrea. One more time, Andrea. Count. Everybody help me count. 1. And many children of these children come from homes where no one speaks English. All they know is what jump is in Spanish or what run is in Spanish. Wow, David, go! Jump! Oh, good job! And they're going to become fluent English speakers. But they need to start out where they are now, because they don't have someone at home to help them speak English. And they need to at least have knowledge in their own language of how to read and how to write, because many of the skills in Spanish are transitional to English.
By second grade, about half of the instruction is in English. For example, Maria Dolores Solares teaches math in both languages.
How would we say the second? $2.96. What is the first thing we do when we have a problem? Nos fijamos en el signo, and that is we look at our sign.
You were teaching math. You were doing some dollars problem,
yes.
And you were kind of moving back and forth.
I need to do that because I have some students that their basic language is Spanish, and they don't have enough skills in English to be able to understand it all.
Later in the day, Solares conducts a lesson on the solar system in 2 parts. First, in Spanish. Once she feels her students have mastered the basic concepts, she teaches it again, this time in English.
I am Mars. I am known as the red planet because of my color.
Well, what we want to do is have the students that their primary language is Spanish learn the basic concepts in their native language. So as they're learning their English, then the two will meet eventually.
The transition to English continues as children move up. In this class of 3rd and 4th graders, virtually all of the instruction is in English, although teacher Janice Tamahiro does speak Spanish. I was looking around the room. On the walls, almost everything.
Print is in English, and it's the children's print. And they can read it to you. They're the authors. And so you will see that they are functioning in English, but if you ask them in Spanish, they could tell you what they did in Spanish.
When you read books, do you read books in English or in Spanish?
Both.
Wow, I get English, I get Spanish, and I get both. Well, now who reads in both? Oh, everybody reads in both. Well, how do you choose which one? Can we go back here?
We try to figure it out which one is the one that is more interesting.
I want reading to be a pleasant experience, and I want them to read what they want to read. So they will choose. Sometimes you'll see them pick English books, and sometimes they choose to read the Spanish books.
They choose, though?
Yes, and these are books that they take home and read.
Now, if you have a question to ask Mrs. Tamahiro, do you ask her in English or in Spanish?
English.
Why?
Because she wants us to learn more English if we get mixed up.
Well, if you went up to her and asked her a question in Spanish, would she answer you in Spanish?
Yes.
She would answer you in English. Would she make you speak in English?
No.
You're allowed to speak Spanish?
Yes.
I'm trying to help them to maintain their Spanish, but to add the English into their language.
So if someone says, well, what's your goal? Or what's the goal of bilingual education, you would say?
It is to be able to function in English in school and to be able to read and write and continue to work in all the content areas in English.
By the end of 5th grade, about 60% of the students here are considered fluent in English. Veteran teacher Sal Castro believes bilingual education works because students feel welcome.
Give them success in whatever language. If they come in with knowing more Martian, give them the Martian language so they'll succeed. Because this is all educational psychology jargon. They must succeed early. And if they succeed early, they'll like school, they want to stay in school, and they want to succeed in school. So one hand helps the other that way.
But in most bilingual education programs, it often appears that one hand does not know what the other hand is doing. Do you have a sense of whether this school does bilingual education well?
I don't think bilingual education is done well here at all.
Why do you say that?
Well, based upon the number of students who transition into English.
In the last 2 years, only 8 out of 950 students have made the transition at his school, Menlo Avenue Elementary in Los Angeles. In bilingual education, 1st grade instruction should be in Spanish, but Angela Benson McDaniel does not speak Spanish. Instead, she provides what she calls an alternative program in English.
Tugboat. And give it the sound of DGE. Now let's blend it. I can't do a program that I don't believe in. I couldn't offer that to my children and give them something that I'm supposed to do, but I couldn't feel strong about.
Los esfuerzos eran boicotería,
Huelga.
la huelga, y qué más.
By 4th grade, most instruction should be in English, but in this classroom, the teaching is almost entirely in Spanish.
Y después de las huelgas, ¿cómo se?
Se bajaron un poquito más.
Okay. I was told that they can't be writing in English, except for ESL. I can't tell them, okay, we're going to write a page, and I want you guys to write it in English.
Students at Menlo Avenue have been exposed to all sorts of instruction. English only, Spanish only, and a mixture of both.
But this year, they're in an all bilingual class, and with teachers speak Spanish, so they're being flip-flopped, in these programs. Yeah.
There is another problem. Do you have books in English?
I don't have books in English. Like the core books, like this history book. I don't have English books, and I don't have enough Spanish books to go around.
Because Los Angeles does not have enough qualified bilingual teachers, it gives out emergency credentials to college graduates like Cesar Garcia. Garcia has little teacher training and no teaching experience. In all, 36% of Menlo Avenue's teachers hold emergency credentials, including Rigoberto Garcia, who teaches 5th grade.
It's eased up a bit in the sense that I know what I'm supposed to be teaching. I know the curriculum, at least the 5th grade. I'm not an expert in it, but I heard you don't become an expert teacher until you got at least a couple years under your belt. I only have a couple months, so I'm working my way up there.
How old are you?
I'm 22.
This is your first teaching?
Yeah, it's my first teaching assignment, yes.
At the end of the year, Garcia's students will be tested, but he has not been told if the exam will be in English or in Spanish.
Yeah, it's a little vague. Right now, we don't know what we're going to be testing on. I got information at the beginning of the year, at least when we started, that we were going to be testing both languages. We're going to take the Stanford 9 and Aprenda. Stanford 9 is in English, Aprenda is in Spanish. Now, I just got, or maybe it's a rumor or what have you, that the district is kind of swaying the whole district to just take the Aprenda exam. Okay, bueno. Antes de empezar el examen que vamos a tomar, vamos a hacer un poquito de repaso de uno de los conceptos que vamos a encontrar en el examen.
Mr. Garcia seems like a nice man.
Yeah, he's a nice man.
He's new, though.
Yes.
Who was your teacher at the beginning?
The first one started teaching, but he was a police, so he sleep.
Policeman?
Yeah. So he worked at the night. So in the morning, he came to sleep. Sleep.
To sleep during class?
Yeah. Oh. He said, okay, do math at page 31. Then we started, and then when he see that everyone was doing math, he started to sleep.
He would fall asleep?
Yeah.
What do parents say about this?
You know, for the most part, parents in these communities, they kind of don't know what's going on. They feel that the school's taking care of it. They know what they're doing. You know, if they tell them, you know, your son's going to be doing better in this bilingual program, then they're going to say, okay, you know best.
Latino parents tend to respect the authority of the school.
Exactly. But
you think that they're getting...
I don't think they really understand what's going on.
What parents may not understand is their school's track record. In the past 2 years, only 8 Menlo Avenue students have made the leap to English fluency. Disappointing results, like those at Menlo Avenue, have given bilingual education a bad name. But bilingual education, good or bad, is used in only 30% of California's classrooms. Most Latino students here are exposed to a hodgepodge of programs, and 16% receive nothing at all. Chris Gutierrez is professor of education at UCLA.
If you go and study Latino schools as I do, and you see a range of schools throughout the city, it won't take a rocket scientist to figure out that the opportunity to learn and the kinds of context for learning that these kids have are so qualitatively different than other kids.
The distribution of educational resources is a more powerful determinant, for example, than racial prejudice.
Roberto Suro, a reporter for the Washington Post, is the author of Strangers Among Us, a book about the impact of Latino immigration in the United States.
When you look at a community like the Latino immigrant community in various parts of this country, the kind of education that they're offered is the most powerful force in determining where that second generation is going to end up.
Instead of providing more teachers and books to ensure successful bilingual education, Californians voted overwhelmingly in June of 1998 to ban the program. When a court challenge failed, the ban went into effect. When Menlo Avenue and Woodlawn opened in August, teaching was in English. Woodlawn hopes to save its bilingual program, but parents have to vote for it. Proposition 227 specifically endorses the approach to teaching non-English speakers known as English immersion, which immerses students in English for the entire day. As with bilingual education, the goal is English fluency. When Jan Tuin's kindergarten students enrolled at Taft Elementary School in Santa Ana 6 months ago, most of them spoke no English.
And, not A, but and. Egg. Here we go. Go to a star. No, it is definitely not a sink or swim program. We use all kinds of visuals for the children. We model everything very closely. We do use the sign language.
Teachers often use sign language to illustrate the meaning of words. Most of Taft's 42 teachers are not bilingual. You speak Spanish to them?
I don't speak Spanish, but Miss Lades, our assistant, does speak Spanish with the children. If there's something that they need to convey, like an idea, feeling, something more abstract, then I have them talk to her. She translates. How many of you can speak English now? Me. How many of you like to speak English? Me. See, they like to speak English.
Would you characterize yourself as an English-only person?
Oh, heavens no. I love being bilingual. In fact, I'm working on becoming trilingual. No, English only. I would characterize myself as being an English literacy advocate.
First grade teacher Gloria Mata-Tuckman, who is Mexican-American, has become nationally known for her support of English immersion.
English immersion, sheltered English immersion, is nothing new that has been created. I mean, it's been around for generations and generations, decades and decades. And it is really a very simple process in teaching English. If you can speak English, you can teach English.
Okay, just a minute. Do you see, show me where the tin box is. Here. And what does it say on the tin box right here?
Go fish.
What do you think is inside that box?
Fish.
What did he do?
He ate the fish.
He ate the fish.
You're widely recognized as an opponent of bilingual education. Why are you so critical of bilingual education?
Because it really delays the learning of English. That's it in a nutshell. It does not teach English.
Teacher.
In second grade, emphasis on speaking and learning to read in English intensifies.
At our school, we have them divided into 3 groups for English immersion. I have the beginning level. Just a second, Jesus. The next page, are you ready? Here we go. So we're going over all day long how to decode the words, how to define what these words mean, how to write in English, and they've come a long, long ways. Let's see if you can remember, what is the sign for cat? If you remember it from yesterday, show me the sign language sign for cat. She tickled him. Who can tell me, what does tickled mean? Who could show me? Yolanda, show me what tickling would be. Do you use your hands when you tickle? Okay, and what do you, when you tickle someone, what do they do? If you tickle someone, what do they do?
They giggle.
They giggle.
Most of the students in Nancy Morosi's class have either transferred from a bilingual education program at another school or recently arrived in the United States. Do your parents like you to speak English?
Yeah. Yes. Mine does.
Tell me.
Mine does.
Why?
Because they want me to read, write, and to speak English better, to talk a lot better in English.
Why do they want you to do that?
Because I was Mexican and I didn't know how to read in English and write in English and speak English.
But you learned and you're only in second grade?
Yeah.
Is it hard to learn English?
No.
No?
No.
How about your mother and father? Do they speak English?
My sister and my brother do, but not my mom.
Do you worry that the kids will lose their Spanish?
Don't worry too much because most of these boys and girls have Spanish at home. They are getting a lot of Spanish at home. I've had parents in the past tell me they're concerned because their children start using English at home and they feel like there's a separation between them. What do I say to a parent who gets worried? I usually tell them to encourage their children to continue to know both English and Spanish because it's very important to know 2 languages.
So you're teaching math?
Yes, this is math.
But are you teaching...
Lots of oral language also in math.
Are you teaching English at the same time?
All day long. All day long. Everything is in English. Boys and girls, this week we've been talking about fractions. Remember we were talking about fractions? We have 2 words here, numerator and denominator. So if we have a set of 6 children, my denominator can be 6. Tang, what part of my set are girls?
3.
So 3 out of the 6. So what is my fraction?
3, 6.
3, 6 are girls, good.
If you have hair that sticks up a little
Marlene Manley is teaching her 4th graders to follow directions. For her new students, it's also a basic English lesson. Supporters of English immersion claim that it has another important advantage. It works with students from many language backgrounds.
We have one student who's new to this country. For about 2 weeks ago, he got here from Vietnam, and we do have a Vietnamese aide who is helping, instructional assistant, and takes him to the side and re-explains what I've already explained. So not only is he hearing it first in English, but then he's hearing it in his native language also.
That's the young boy over there.
Right.
I was watching him. He looks lost.
Right. He does look lost, but as he watched the students around him, he was able to do the actions. Forward. Hands behind you. Hands up. Hands down. Hands forward. Oh, listen with your ears as I'm telling you the directions. And so it's only his 2nd week here, and so as he starts hearing what I'm saying and watching the other students as they're reacting to me, he's going to be able to pick them up, and he is getting a lot of extra help.
Students at Taft do acquire English skills. Taft has some of the highest test scores in the entire Santa Ana School District, and the school promotes English immersion as a model for the entire state. But just as there are examples of bad bilingual education, bad immersion programs exist. Ones which simply drop kids into English-speaking situations and expect them to learn English. That is what happened to Jackie Dominguez as a kindergartner.
Well, the first time I cried, because I didn't even know what they were saying, so I was like nervous.
Scared?
I got over it.
It's like you're taking the opportunity of their success away right there as a child. You're telling them Spanish is bad.
I once interviewed a colleague for an article. He had a wonderful story. He talks about the importance of bilingualism and biculturalism in education. And he said, you know, I came to kindergarten and I walked in with my maleta, which means suitcase. And he said, and it was filled with all my treasures, my language, my experiences, my stories. But when I got to kindergarten, they didn't let me use any of them. And moreover, they didn't even let me bring my maleta into the classroom. And I think what he was describing so profoundly was that experience of never being able to insert myself, my own social and cultural and linguistic experiences into this process that must be effacing over time.
But Gloria Mara-Tuckman maintains that the school's primary responsibilities are to teach students to read, write, and speak English.
I feel it is the family's responsibility to maintain the home language. Yes, the culture and home language. Appreciation and respect for someone's culture and language is something else.
In this school, I met a fourth grader, and I asked her to read to me, and she read to me in English. She's Latina. She read haltingly, but she could read. And then I asked her to read to me in Spanish. Try this first word.
Animal.
All right, that's animal in English. In Spanish, it would be...
No.
Animal?
Animal.
What is animal?
An animal.
Animal. And what is this word?
Future.
Fuerte.
Fuerte.
And she couldn't do it. And she said, I wish the school could teach me to read and write in Spanish.
The school will teach her to read and write in Spanish. Do you know when? When she gets perhaps to junior high school or intermediate school or high school. I mean, what is stopping anyone from taking language classes at that point, whether it be Spanish, whether it be German, whether it be French, or whatever the language.
Why wait until high school or wait until college to take Spanish 1 and Spanish 2? They've learned more than I can learn in Spanish 1, 2, and 3, and they're just in first and second grade.
Paula Mahan uses an approach called dual language. What separates dual language from bilingual education and English immersion is the insistence that English alone is not enough. Speaking and writing in 2 languages is the goal. Mahan created the dual language program here at Grandview Elementary School in Los Angeles. Mahan teaches this science lesson to native Spanish and English speakers entirely in Spanish. About 70% of her day is spent using Spanish.
Ya yo quiero que ustedes pueden pensar. Piensen ustedes.
La zanahoria. ¿Y también?
La zanahoria va a subir.
La raíz.
Ay, el raíz va a subir.
El agua.
¿Y qué va a pasar? Marcela? ¿Qué? Puntitas de color? Uh-huh. We are all learning a second language. Some of us are learning English as a second language, and some of us are learning Spanish as a second language.
Now, this is the first English I've heard you speaking.
That's right. In fact, I'm very uncomfortable speaking English in front of my class this way. When we have our English time, what is it we do? But you tell me you touch the button and we change into English, and I didn't touch the button and change into English. Porque cuando un raíz está creciendo en un jardín o en la tierra. Muy bien.
It just goes in the tierra, and then the plants suck it up so the weeds don't get it.
Tú tienes razón.
A couple of times in the question and answer, a couple of the children were speaking in Spanish and then slipped into English and then back into Spanish.
Right.
And you, however, stayed in Spanish.
Right. That happens a lot, particularly in the lower grades, where the children will be stronger in one language or the other, and they'll fall back into that language. So because in the primary grades we're working mostly on Spanish, I'll reinforce the Spanish by either repeating what they say or, like I asked Joey, to try to say it in Spanish, and he did a pretty good job. ¿Y qué va a pasar otra vez en español, Joey?
Se va los frutas,
raíces
se van a tocar este agua y se hablarlo y that's how it grows.
Talk about bilingual education. It's to get the Spanish-speaking kids into English. This is not that. It's a different approach?
It's very different from that. The reason being, when it's to get them, as you say, into English, it's an indication that there's something wrong with where they are. What we're saying is there's nothing wrong with where they are. In fact, where they are is in a real plus place. They have a language. And when we can take that language and in a situation like this of half English speakers, half Spanish speakers, share the language with each other. En este mundo es muy importante para tener dos lenguajes, ¿verdad?
I can speak 3 languages, and I like to speak my language because I like French, and I like Mexican and English.
Okay, and why do you think it's important to know 3 languages?
Because, and then if you read three books of languages, then that opens a new world for you.
In a few years, these students will be in Julie Kopp's 5th grade class, and all will be bilingual and biliterate. Half of their day will be in Spanish, the other half in English.
Onto your circle, so you remember what type of pattern block you used.
No, you have to divide it by 360.
Dual language students do better on tests than students in bilingual education and English immersion. And Proposition 227 allows programs like this one at Grandview if most parents vote in favor.
So if a parent were to, ask me why should I put my child in this immersion program, my Anglo child to learn 2 languages, I'll say, well, look at these Spanish-speaking kids. They're going to have 2 languages, so wake up. This is what's going to happen. Your child will be monolingual. This Latino kid will have 2 languages. So if you want to compete, you should have 2 languages too.
Becoming bilingual is important, but most of the dropouts we met speak 2 languages. They did not leave school because they couldn't get along in English. We began with a question: why the high dropout rate among Latino youth? It seems the answer has more to do with politics and economics than with education. Joanne Iniguez and Jackie Gutierrez, both 17, are close friends. Their parents came to the United States from Mexico. Joanne and Jackie were born and raised in Los Angeles. Tell me about school. What school was like?
School's boring.
Did you ever like school?
I used to always did. I dropped out when I was in 8th grade, and I went back to high school with my baby, but I didn't like it. And, I just want to take care of my baby.
Joanne's 11-month-old baby girl is named Destiny. When did you drop out? How old were you? 8th grade
I was
also?
13.
Did you go back at all?
No.
Because schools in Los Angeles are overcrowded and understaffed, some young people, like Joanne and Jackie, seem to fall through the cracks. Did somebody come from the school and say, hey, Jackie, where are you?
No.
Because they're supposed to.
They did.
Supposed to?
Sure.
Not to me.
Not to me, yeah.
I wonder why. Joanne and Jackie admit that their schools did send notes home, which they intercepted and threw away. Their parents could not have read them anyway. The notes were in English. Juan Hernandez was also born and raised in Los Angeles.
When I dropped out, I was 17. Learning or doing my work was no problem. It was just like when I started thinking different, I started hanging with the other bad boys.
All 3, Juan, Joanne, and Jackie, joined gangs. Is that automatic?
Not basically. I just got in because when I was 14, I wasn't thinking, I guess, so I just got in the gang.
Why do you join a gang?
I wanted to.
Why did you want to?
I don't know. I was kicking it with them for a long time, so.
Oh, so you were hanging out with them?
Yeah.
I grew up with them. My family, my cousins from there and everything.
What do you do in a gang?
Basically, what I did was just bad stuff, steal cars, go mess around with people, go look for trouble with other thugs and stuff like that. That's what I used to do.
Are you going to go back to school?
Me, basically, I've been trying to enroll at this adult school, but the truth, I haven't even went. The truth, I can't lie, Why should I lie? I haven't even went to enroll or anything. you know.
So how long has it been since you've been in school?
Like 4 years.
4 years. And has it been a good 4 years?
Yeah, it's been alright.
What does that mean?
There's good times and there's bad times.
Tell me about the good times.
I party.
Jackie says she parties with her gang at night, but during the day she looks after her nephews, while her older sister is going back to school to earn a diploma.
I pressure her because sometimes she gets lazy, like the alarm rings and she doesn't want to get up. I tell her get up because she does have kids to support.
So wait a minute here. Here's Jackie, the dropout.
I don't have kids, see?
So because you don't have kids, you don't need to
right now I don't care.
You don't need to get a life?
No, I need to get a life, yeah, but not right now.
What makes you scared? Makes you feel afraid?
It makes me feel afraid. It's a day out here, you know. And like any day, like every day makes me feel afraid because I don't know what's coming for me in the future. My future, that's what I'm afraid of too. Like, I never know where I might be in the future, you know what I'm saying? I might not have a home, kids, you know. I might be out in the streets or something. I mean, not going to school or something like that. Something bad happening to me.
When you sit around and talk about life, what kind of things do you talk about?
Life?
Yeah, I mean, do you ever sit and say, you know, what would you like? What do you dream about?
No.
If you could be anything.
Anything?
Yeah, like 10 years from now.
I don't know.
Do you have a dream?
My dream is, I don't know.
One of the saddest experiences I had was with this group of students and had a very similar response. And then I asked them, if you could tomorrow, I could declare and allow you to become anything you'd like to be, what would you like to be? What would you like to do? The young women could not give me one response. And I said, now remember, we're doing magic here. We can become anything. And they could not even imagine a career and a future. And that was singularly one of the most depressing experiences I've had.
When you look in the mirror at yourself, what do you see?
I see a guy right there, you know, that doesn't know his future, doesn't know what he's gonna have in the future. And that's all I see, you know. I see myself, my reflection.
Where has the hope gone? What conditions have they been participating in, even in schooling, that would lead to such hopelessness or despair or lack of imagination about what to become?
I think that part of it probably does have to do with a curriculum that is very, very, they feel like they're always studying about somebody else.
Carlos Jimenez believes that some Latino students cannot imagine an intriguing and bright future because they're not being taught about their own heritage.
You don't know your history. You don't know where you come from. You don't know what to be proud of.
To learn her history, Angelica Reyes enrolled in the Mexican-American Studies class taught by Jimenez at Garfield High School in East Los Angeles.
What's the key concept here? Spanish and Indian together? What's the key concept here? The people are known as mestizos.
Jimenez, who has been teaching history for over 20 years, wrote the textbook his class uses because of what he saw as the omission of Latinos from conventional textbooks.
I think it's a disgrace that kids in the United States are more familiar with Egyptian pyramids than they are of Mexican pyramids, or they know more about the French Revolution than the Mexican Revolution. When California used to be a part of Mexico, and it's our neighbor to the south, we're tied together with them through NAFTA now, but we're completely ignorant of that country, its history, the people. And I think it has devastating effects on the young people in terms of their own self-image.
Like, I never knew about my history, and I never cared to know. I always thought that Mexicans were inferior and everything.
Mariana Lara is also taking Jimenez's class.
And it's good to learn all of this because you have to know the past to understand your future.
Intrigued by what she learned about her own heritage, Mariana joined an Aztec dance group. Jimenez's class has awakened Angelica's interest in recent history.
Until this class, yeah, I knew who Cesar Chavez was. Yeah, they named a street over this guy. Big deal. But I never knew what he did. I never knew about the farm workers, about our civil rights movement, which was a civil rights movement.
Like learning our culture, we could teach other people about it, and then so they won't look down on us, or not only us, but like other races.
It has made me a proud Chicana. It has made me want to strive for more. It's like it has opened many doors for me.
I had 5 girls from one of my AP history classes last year get into Wellesley College. And some of them have told me now that at Wellesley, there's sort of this unstated thing where people sort of look at them and say, affirmative action, huh? That's how you got in. Like you really don't belong here. And so I think you really need to be well-grounded and real solid in your self-image to be able to withstand the kind of stereotyping that a lot of Latinos are the victims of still in the United States.
Jimenez says that most Latinos never get the chance to study who they are and where they came from.
Right now, maybe, at Garfield we probably have 5,000 students, and there are probably only 75 or 100 of them that are actually in a Mexican-American Studies elective class.
Latino youth are more likely to learn about themselves from the media. Jimenez believes that most of what they see is negative.
It's still the problem like in mainstream television shows. There aren't any Latino families. You know, there's no, like, there has never been anything like a Cosby show with Latinos, and that's why there's so many stereotypes, you know.
Sal Delgado, a junior at Garfield, is also studying Mexican-American history.
Basically, you come to a society where it's all European, all white. You turn on the television, all the popular shows are the white people. When you see the Mexican, he's the guy who robs a liquor store or the bum on the street. And sometimes you do see Hispanic shows of Hispanics, but usually they're portrayed in negative ways, or they make fun of themselves, and it only aggravates the problem of being apathetic to education.
Mexican Americans love education, so they go to night school and they take Spanish and get a B.
We have the image of getting the worst jobs, like the gardener or the cook or the janitor, work that other people don't want to do.
I'm not saying whites are racist, you know, but like sometimes I would say they feel superior. And they feel like, oh, Mexicans, you know, they just migrate over here and they're just here to take our welfare. And, you know, all these things, when it's like not true, you know, most people that come here are here to work hard.
Jimenez says Latinos may learn to believe in their own inferiority.
I was reading the names once at a graduation ceremony. A kid hands me his name on a card and he says, "Say my name in English, please." That's a direct quote. In other words, don't pronounce it the right way. Don't say Agredondo, say Arredondo. That's how he wanted it pronounced.
Which says he didn't think all that much of himself.
Well, you know, I think it's I think it's sad when we're not proud of who we are and even what our names are. Hey, the schools used to, you know, if I had gone to school maybe 5 years earlier, Carlos would have become Carl, and that would have been my official name. You checked into school, Maria became Mary. Ricardo became Ricky, and that was your official name on the school transcript all the way through school. It wasn't a choice. The schools did it.
That's not all the schools did. Victoria Castro is now president of the Los Angeles School Board, but when she was a student in high school in the 1960s, she told her guidance counselor that she wanted to go to Mills, a top four-year college. Her brothers were well educated. One was getting his doctorate, while another was at Antioch College. But her counselor had other ideas.
Is that she pulled like my transcripts or my record, and she actually voiced to me, "I think you should go to the community college, and if you do well, you can transfer to a four-year." And she actually said, if you do well, you can. And so pretty much what I reflecting on is that I didn't have the self-esteem to be assertive and say, no, I've investigated, I've got the grades, I'm going to go to Mills. Instead, I retreated. And I never shared that story with my brothers. And so I sort of made my own compromise and went and got my own application to Cal State Los Angeles. So I sort of compromised my goals because I really thought she had something there that said I couldn't do it. That changed my life. That changed my ideas about public education.
So you've been working that off ever since.
And quite not yet, because I hear students repeat that story today. And in fact, just about 2 months ago, there was a student from Jordan High School who was addressing the board as to her concerns. And she says, you know, I feel really bad all the time that I have to defend myself, that I can go to college and I can make it. And I go, well, who do you defend yourself with? And I said, is it your peers? That's what, she says, oh no, I have to talk to my counselors and my teachers and tell them this is what I want to do. So 30 years later, it exists to the same extent in many children's lives here.
The misting over in your eyes, is that remembering for yourself, or is that thinking about kids today?
I think that's for kids today. I somehow overcame that, but when you work very hard, you hate to hear the story repeated.
When I used to go to Virgil, just because I was in the gang and everything, my math teacher, you know, she just came up to me. She felt like, what are you doing here? That I should drop out, that I'm no good, that what am I doing here? I'm just like taking my seat for some other person that wants to learn.
Daria Diaz did drop out for 2 years. Last year, she came back to school and is now on the honor roll. Are those explanations and indifferent bureaucracy, a curriculum that ignores Latin American history, and thoughtless and perhaps even racist adults enough to explain the continuing failure of so many Latino youth? The one piece of the puzzle that may tie all these explanations together is poverty. This is especially true for immigrant populations.
The poverty syndrome, it's not a Latino, it's part of the Latino culture, it's part of the poverty culture. Because in Appalachia, they feel the same way. So because the rich or the upper middle class or upper classes in Mexico and other Latin American countries, they send their kids off to school real fast.
But Latino immigrant children may miss school altogether or go for only a few years. Sal Castro teaches history at Belmont High School. Many of his students come from low-income households. Some have to work to help support the family.
When we go to the homes and tell the parents to allow the young people to go to school, they come up with, they have a responsibility to the home and to the family and this and that.
I think the parents do see it as the right way they do see the value of education, but they also want to have financial support. And when they can't make it, well, they have no choice. They have to sacrifice the education to make it financially.
See, the families have to know that in a highly technical country like this, you must have an education because otherwise you'll be hitting the glass ceiling very fast.
If no one in your family went beyond 5th or 6th grade and your kid gets to 10th or 11th grade and speaks English fluently, so they're going, you know, this is a lot more education than, I mean, you understand things no one in our family has ever understood.
How much school did your mother have?
Oh, she went to school in Mexico, but she dropped out when she was like young, because she had to help her mother out, because over there in Mexico it's like something different. You gotta help your parents out.
My dad told me he went like 2nd grade.
2nd grade.
Yeah, my parents so
2nd grade.
How about your mom?
She never went to school.
But other Latino parents who did not get much schooling want their children to go as far as they can. What's the level of education for your mom and dad?
Like elementary. I'm the oldest in my house. And I'm going to be the first one to go to college. So it's a very scary feeling.
It's like I can't really go to my parents for homework. It's like a lot on myself.
So there's not a tradition of, well, of course, Angie, you're going to go.
Oh, but don't get me wrong. I have a lot of support from my parents and my family. They're like, they worked hard to get me what they never got. And they're always telling me, you know what, you're going to college, you're going to be successful and everything. You know, whatever they didn't get, they want me to have it.
Oye, hija, ¿y de cuál de los dos colegios te interesas más?
I think I'm gonna end up going to Sonoma. Just go there for 2 years and then transfer to a major university.
Ironically, many Latino youth have a ready and uncomplicated answer to our question. Why is it that so many Latinas, don't finish high school?
I don't think it's a school. It's our fault, students. It's our fault.
I think it was my fault, first of all, because I'm not going. I don't think it was their fault, you know. They would have loved me to go every day, have perfect attendance, you know. So it was my fault.
Why do they drop out? Well, it's on them. They could have made a decision to work harder.
Do you find that surprising, that they would kind of internalize that failure?
So that's what they've done. They've internalized
the failure. I think there's a whole culture of school that is certainly alienating, and if you haven't been very successful, I think it's not surprising that they would see themselves as a failure, rather than seeing that it might be a whole series of things, including, of course, their own role and the responsibility to take in the learning process, which is not to be minimized.
Professor Gutierrez could be talking about this young man, Juan Villegas, who is not in a gang. Juan is a sophomore at Belmont High School.
I just like this. I like school, but to mess around sometimes. To come and mess around, not really learn anything, just to mess around, see the girls or something, meet girls or ditch class or something. I don't know.
He's bright.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
They think I'm smart, but like I don't show. I don't think I'm smart. If I want to, I'll be smart. But I don't want to, just like messing around. That ain't in me, you know. Like be somebody. I wish I could be somebody, but you know it's hard.
If you could be somebody, who would you be?
Who would I be? I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know what I want to be yet. See?
He's appealing. He's got an outgoing personality.
Yes, he got charisma. Yes, of course.
He has zero aspirations.
Yeah, and exactly.
I mean, I've known kids like that, and they've never. They don't have expectations. So they've never seen something they could grasp. I mean, no one's ever said to them, "Look, you want to be a doctor? Here's how you do it, and you can do it, and we'll help you do it." No one's ever given them a sense of possibility.
Providing that sense of possibility, some teachers see that as their job, as important as teaching math or history.
Why did I make it? My mom would say, you made it because you wanted to, and I would tell her that's not the whole truth. The whole truth is some people took an interest in me. Like I told you the story with Sal right here. As a matter of fact, it was down on that track right there, right about the 40-yard line right there.
Tell me the story.
Robert, by some miracle, I said a couple of words to him, and it turned it around.
What do you want to do? I said, I remember clearly by the time I said, I want to be a regular person. He looked at me and looked up to the sky and he called me his name and he said, what do you mean a regular person? What is a regular person? My idea was work 9 to 5 like my dad did. I thought that was a regular person. He says, no, I want you to come to my office. And I went and saw him that same day.
I raised hell with him because he said he was, I think, going to go to work, didn't know exactly what he was going to do, and I more or less grabbed him and handed him some college applications.
Robert Bautista went to Sonoma State University. After graduating, he came back to Belmont High as a coach.
Well, that's the payoff. That's the payoff. The hard work, and it really wasn't any hard work. It was a couple of sentences and going here and going there, doing that little extra, and it really paid off. And it's nice. There's several kids that's happened to, and that we don't get paid much as teachers, but that's our big payoff.
I was these kids when I was in high school. I did play out there in lunch, out there playing basketball. That was me. So that I see a reflection of myself when I see a kid here walking around, whether he's 6 foot tall or 5 foot. I see a reflection of me. I see what his thought process is, you know.
The reflections Bautista sees are the millions of Latino youth who are changing the face of America and presenting a challenge to us all.
It's about our democracy. It's about the standard of living in this country. It's about the type of society that we live in and understanding that we're a diverse society and that some way, somehow, what goes on in the public education is going to affect your life.
Let's go back to our original question. Why the high dropout rate among Latino youth? It should be clear that we cannot place all the responsibility on either the schools or young Latinos. We can't blame them and somehow at the same time expect them to solve the problem. This is not simply an educational challenge. It's a political, economic, and moral one. And to pretend otherwise is to turn our backs on an entire generation of Americans.
To find out more about this program, visit us at PBS Online at the internet address on your screen. A production of Learning Matters Incorporated and presented by South Carolina ETV.